Who's right? Justin Gaethje or Jon Anik? Now, it has to do with Charles Oliveira and both weighed in. And don't tell me, well, Gaethje's getting ready to fight him and he has to think that. Like, no, I understand that. But Justin Gaethje does make a very fair point. Whether he's trying to talk himself into something or not, he is making a very fair point. He's talking about Charles Oliveira. And Gaethje's stance is basically, look, this guy's a stud. He's the champion. I don't question that. However, he's the same, and Gaethje called him a coward, said he's the same coward deep down inside that we saw in his younger days. And then Justin gave examples about when you fought Cub Swanson or when he fought Donald Cerrone, right? Gaethje gave a few examples, and he said that Oliveira went out there and quit. Now, Jon Anik, now, I understand. Gaethje's trying to get mentally in the right frame of mind. I'm just asking, are you the same person? Is that little frightened boy still inside of you once you become a man and once you become a champion? Or let's juxtapose that with what Jon Anik said, where he called Charles Oliveira extremely undervalued. He talked about the growth. He talked about the greatness. He even made comparisons to Khabib Nurmagomedov. And I will tell you one person that has been extremely polite when discussing the skills of Charles Oliveira is Khabib Nurmagomedov. Khabib doesn't have to be nice to anybody. Khabib does not have to praise anybody. He didn't have to. He elects to do it with Charles, and it's just from a place of sincerity. He sees that Charles is really good. He's got some really good skills, and that's all that Khabib's ever said. But you can't really compare the two careers. You truly cannot. Like, one thing that will always be amazing about Khabib, it wasn't just that he went out and he had more 10-8 rounds than anybody. It wasn't just that he wanted to become the most famous and sought-after Muslim athlete on the face of the globe. It wasn't just that they built an arena for him. Like, those were all really cool things. 29-0. That's what's really special. To do something and to do it right consistently, it's shockingly difficult. LeBron can't make that claim. Tiger can't make that claim. Serena can't make that claim. Simone Biles could probably flirt with that somewhere along the way. But I mean, I'm talking about of all time, the most special athletes, to do something perfect, to do it better than anybody else does, and do it 29 straight times. Now, you're ultimately, though, when you're talking about who's better or who won in a fight, it's not a question of just comparing resumes, somebody's good moments that the whole world saw versus somebody's bad moments that the whole world saw. You're talking about Charles Oliveira at his absolute best versus said opponent, in this case, Justin Gaethje, at his absolute best. What happens then? And it is an interesting question. And I do fall on the side of Jon Anik. I do think that a person can change. I do think that, right, somebody gets grabbed. You don't know when, though. You don't know when your window of opportunity is going to present itself. You don't know what experiences you're going to have. What training, what defeats. You don't know what you're going to have to get to this final beautiful product. You really don't. So if you are a boy who got an opportunity to go fight in the UFC and you took said opportunity and you've got some growing pains, you would go into the category of normal. But if you overcame those and turned into a man in front of the world, who's now the king of a division, which happens to be the hardest division in the whole sport, you deserve that credit too. And anytime you can compare anybody to Khabib, you're giving them an extreme compliment. And I can make one comparison. This is weak. My argument is very weak, but in all fairness, they have a common opponent. Charles Oliveira beat Dustin Poirier 61 seconds faster than Khabib did. Now, you do what you want with that. I'm not attempting to make a statement. Don't think you have to fire back at me, but it's a relevant fact. Sure it is. If you're going to work Khabib into a conversation, you got to find some way to do that. Khabib was extremely dominant versus Justin Gaethje. If Justin goes out and beats Oliveira, I mean, we just close up this argument. We don't have anything else to do. Don't tell me MMA math doesn't work. MMA math works all the time. There's no sporting event in the world that doesn't bracket its way down to a round robin. Work its way out. If you got common opponents and you beat a guy who beat another guy, you don't have to go and do that contest. It's very true. It's very relevant. But I'm just asking you, when somebody is at their worst or somebody gets into an organization prematurely, which you have no way to know, it's only a hindsight issue. Do you hold that against them forever? Are you truly that same person? I watched George St-Pierre, who is simply the best fighter that has ever done. I watched George St-Pierre give a match away to Matt Serra. I apologize, to Matt Hughes. George went out of his way to give him his arm and tap with the other eye. It wasn't even a submission that was on. George was so dominant in doing so well, he scared himself. George was just a kid. He had a beautiful record. He earned himself a title shot. against a guy that he viewed as a hero in Matt Hughes, who he thought was going to be a really hard fight. It wasn't close. George was absolutely dominated. That freaked him out. He goes, my God, there's only a couple of seconds left. I'm supposed to lose. I'm not supposed to win. Let me go out of the way to fix the script so the story ends the way that it's supposed to, which is a glorious moment for Matt Hughes and a nice try, George. I mean, he just hands him this. George knows 20 different ways to get this. He just hands him an arm and he's tapping it. I mean, it was one of these things. Then George gets in the back and goes, wait a minute. I'm better than I thought. I do deserve to win. I am capable of doing this. Let's do a rematch. And it was absolute domination. And I'm not looking to take any shots there at any sort of an athlete, Matt Hughes or something along these lines. That's just what happens. And that's a very real thing in sport. It's a piece of psychology that if you've never been there, you won't know exists, but it is. When you go out and you do better at something than you thought you were going to do, when you have a preconceived notion, including a negative one, you will your body and your mind will find a way to catch up so that the ending is what you envisioned, including if it was against yourself. I don't think anybody could ever watch George St-Pierre and come to the conclusion that he's a coward or he's the same coward that he would. No, that's not true. He grew, he learned, and he happened to do it in front of the world, and we witnessed it. I don't know if Charles Oliveira is that guy. I'm not quite ready to give him that credit, in all fairness. I mean, I quit calling him Charlie Olives. I'm getting on board that there's something special there, but I'm not all the way sold. I saw those fights with Cub Swanson. I saw those fights against Nick Lentz and Jim Miller, and I followed them all. Moreover, I saw when he got beat on the scale a couple of times. How long do I have the right to hold that against him? This guy's the champion of the world in the hardest division that there is. This guy beat Tony Ferguson. This guy beat Dustin Poirier. Right? I think what Anik is saying really is relevant and true. And I don't think you can hold something against a guy on both sides of his career. Generally, it's in reverse. Generally, a guy comes in, he's a ball of fire, he does a really great job. It's on the later part of his career, just as he's getting ready to say goodbye, that he starts sailing them in. That he starts showing up to get a paycheck and make an excuse on the way out. Like, it's a very common thing. Everybody goes through the cash grab part of their career. That's true. Oliveira looks like he did it in reverse. It looks like he got signed and he got into an organization and he got on TV and he got good opponents and he got featured fights a little bit too early. Looked like he needed to mature. It looked like he needed to grow. It's just food for thought. It's just speculation. But if you are trying to break down the body of work to come to an analysis of who's going to win between Gaethje and Oliveira, you largely will look at all of their fights when you really need to ask yourself one question. The best performance you've ever seen from Oliveira versus the best performance you've ever seen from Justin Gaethje. If those two guys collided, in that case, who do you predict it wins?